afternoon. It's Wednesday, the 21st of January. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. We open in Tel Aviv, where a Palestinian terrorist went on a stabbing rampage aboard a bus during morning rush hour. The attacker tried to flee the scene, but was chased down by prison authority officials who happened to be in the area. IBA's Margot Dukevich has this report.
13 Israelis were wounded, 4 seriously, in a stabbing rampage by a single attacker on a Tel Aviv bus this morning. Hamza Matrouk, the 22-year-old terrorist, boarded Dan bus number 40, attacked the driver and proceeded to stab passengers before fleeing on foot. Bus driver Herzl Biton fought the terrorist despite suffering stab wounds to the chest and opened the bus doors to allow the passengers out. The attack occurred at a major thoroughfare near the Mariv Bridge. Ambulance crews transferred the wounded to hospitals in the area and treated others for shock. Matrouk, a resident of Tulkarem who had entered Israel illegally, was shot in the leg by members of the prison authorities' Nachshon unit who were driving in a vehicle behind the bus and saw the attack and spotted him fleeing to a nearby street and pursued him. Suffering light injuries, Matrouk was taken into custody. He later told security officials he waged the attack because of last summer's Operation Protective Edge and the tensions on the Temple Mount. He said he was motivated after viewing radical Islamic material that spoke of paradise.
This morning's terrorist attack in Tel Aviv is driven by the same hatred that has motivated similar such attacks in Paris, in Brussels, and across the world. And Hamas, by praising this morning's attack, has once again demonstrated exactly what Hamas is, a brutal and vicious terrorist organization. Now, President Abbas, the leader of the Palestinians, cannot have it both ways. He can't link arms with world leaders in Paris to condemn terrorism when he links arms with Hamas back at home.
Hamas praised the terrorists, calling the attack a brave and heroic act against Zionists in Tel Aviv. Margot Dukevich, IBA News.
Well, on the campaign trail in Jerusalem's Machne Yehuda market, former ambassador to the United States Michael Oren, who is running for Knesset on Moshe Kahlon's Kulanu list, said today's attack in Tel Aviv is a reminder about the tough neighborhood that we live in.
Election is horrible. Election is to condemn it in every possible way, and to first of all wish a quick recovery to all the people who were injured, and to serve as a reminder of the neighborhood in which we live, and that as we develop our diplomatic platform, which we'll be presenting to the public shortly, we'll take into consideration the very dangerous neighborhood in which we live.
Amid concern of a retaliatory strike by Hezbollah, residents who live in communities along the northern border with Lebanon have been given special instructions from the defense establishment to stay away from the frontier. IBA's Aria O'Sullivan discussed the mood in the north with the Secretary of Kibbutz Baram, Shachar Regev.
The mood is quite routine. There is a bit of a tension because the northern road is closed in this part of Baram, but we have a southern entrance to the kibbutz, so we drive through there. We cannot enter the orchards that are near the border, but again, in this season, in the winter, is not really something that disturbs us. So we are. It's a bit tension, but not more than that, because also we have, we've been here near the border for many years, and we are accustomed to it.
So the kibbutz is, since the pullout from Lebanon 14 years ago, the kibbutz is pretty much used to a quiet border, except for the summer of 2006, yes?
Correct.
And has that infected the lives of people coming to live in the area? Are people staying away? Is it now the height of the tourism season?
I don't feel it influences. We don't have a tourism in Baram, anything, so we're not affected by this.
Are you worried? Are you worried Hezbollah may retaliate?
Yeah, but like any other citizen in this area, not particular because we are, near the border. We didn't have any significant incidents in here.
So people are going on with their normal lives at the moment.
Correct.
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking to us, Shachar.
You're welcome.
According to Lebanese media, Sunday's reported Israeli airstrike on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights targeted a Hezbollah project to establish missile bases in the area from which to fire at Israel. Iranian General Mohammed Ali al-Adadi and several leading Hezbollah operatives were killed in the attack. The London Times is reporting that Dadi was a ballistic missile expert who was visiting Syria as part of the initiative to set up the missile launching sites near the border with Israel. Also among the dead was the son of late Hezbollah terror chief Imad Mughniya. Jihad Mughniya was overseeing the base's placement and responsible for coordinating the transfer of missiles from Syria, Lebanon, and Iran into the Golan. The goal was to avoid sparking another Israel-Lebanon war by enabling Hezbollah to strike at Israel from elsewhere than Lebanon. The situation in Rahat remains tense following fierce overnight clashes in the Bedouin town. Rioters hurled a pipe bomb, rocks, and firebombs at the local police station after a protest march over the death of 2 city residents who died during confrontations with security forces in recent days. Southern District Police arrested 6 suspects for involvement in the latest violence. For the 3rd consecutive day, Arab businesses across the country were closed down in solidarity yesterday to protest what organizers are claiming is police brutality. The unrest erupted in the southern city after the deaths of 21-year-old Sami al-Ajar during a police drug raid last week and 47-year-old Sami al-Zaidana of a heart attack amid riots surrounding al-Ajar's funeral. Aerial video of the funeral has been released in which demonstrators are seen closing in on a police car and attacking the officers trapped inside. Security forces were also filmed using riot control methods in their attempts to disperse the rioters. Investigation into the mysterious death of Argentine state prosecutor Alberto Nisman is ongoing. Government officials in Buenos Aires are pushing for a thorough inquiry into the death, which is still being described as an apparent suicide. Nisman had spent the last decade investigating the 1994 bombing of the Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires and was due to appear in Congress the morning after his death to detail his accusations that President Cristina Fernandez, her foreign minister, and other top officials had agreed to shield the Iranian authorities who allegedly masterminded the bombing. The lead investigators say that so far no indications have surfaced to suggest that anyone else was involved. The gun found next to Nisman was given to him by a colleague the day before his death. There was no gunshot residue on Nisman's hand, although forensic examiners say that it isn't unusual for a small .22 caliber handgun. Nisman's ex-wife, Sandra Arroyo, said no when asked whether the death could have been a suicide. In addition, family and friends are publishing newspaper ads rejecting the notion of suicide. Before his death, Nisman told reporters that he had been threatened repeatedly and 10 federal security officials were assigned for his protection. Authorities in France have arrested 5 Chechens after finding explosives in their possession. The arrests are part of an ongoing crackdown to detain terror suspects following last week's Paris attacks that claimed 17 lives. French officials said today that charges have been filed against 4 other suspects detained in a recent raid following questioning by French prosecutors on suspicion that they aided terrorist Mehdi Koulibaly, who murdered 4 Jews in the deadly attack at a kosher supermarket in Paris before being killed by security forces. The search for other accomplices is ongoing, and French security officials are closely cooperating with their counterparts in Turkey, Spain, and Belgium. Lassana Bathily, who is the Muslim supermarket worker from Mali who saved the lives of many of the hostages during the supermarket attack by hiding them in a large refrigerator, is being honored as a hero and has been granted French citizenship. Meanwhile, a Bulgarian court has agreed to extradite a French national suspected of knowing one of the Kouachi brothers who attacked the Charlie Hebdo office in Paris, killing 12 people. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio is in Paris, where he visited the sites of the recent terror attacks. De Blasio placed a wreath in front of the Hyper Kosher supermarket while accompanied by Jewish leaders, and also visited the offices of the Charlie Hebdo newspaper. The New York mayor compared the impact of the incidents to the 9/11 attacks on his own city.
Paris and New York have walked the same path in so many ways. We have borne the brunt of terror, and we have, over many years, shown the world an example, each in our own way, of tolerance and inclusion, of a pluralistic society, a multicultural society. This attack, like 9/11, is a turning point moment for Paris. 9/11 was a turning point moment for us. Every one of us who was in New York that day remembers where we were and remembers the way it changed our lives. I think for the people of Paris, these attacks had that same impact. And it challenges us to find a way forward.
U.S. President Barack Obama expressed American unity with the people of Paris and others who have been targeted by terrorists during his annual State of the Union address. He declared that the U.S. reserves the right to take unilateral action in its continued efforts to hunt down terrorists and to dismantle their networks. As he delivered his remarks, House representatives raised pencils into the air to demonstrate their support of free speech and solidarity with the victims of the Paris attacks. Obama also called on Congress to pass a resolution to authorize the use of force against the Islamic State, but not to pass legislation imposing new sanctions on Iran over its disputed nuclear development program.
You have a chance to negotiate a comprehensive agreement that prevents a nuclear-armed Iran, secures America and our allies, including Israel, while avoiding yet another Middle East conflict. There are no guarantees that negotiations will succeed. And I keep all options on the table to prevent a nuclear Iran. But new sanctions passed by this Congress at this moment in time will all but guarantee that diplomacy fails, alienating America from its allies, making it harder to maintain sanctions, and ensuring that Iran starts up its nuclear program again. It doesn't make sense. And that's why I will veto any new sanctions bill that threatens to undo this progress.
President Obama's State of the Union appeal to Congress to authorize force against the Islamic State is a likely precursor for the decision to order U.S. troops to launch a ground operation in Syria and Iraq. This according to the head of the BASA Center for Strategic Studies, Professor Gerald Steinberg, speaking with IBA's Aryeh O'Sullivan.
It's possible that the president's trying to prepare what is a reluctant constituency. People who voted for Obama do not want to send troops to go fight in the Middle East again. They want to get out. Iraq, Afghanistan, those are Obama's few accomplishments, in quotes. But he may be preparing the ground with the realization that in order to defeat the kind of barbaric terrorism, we see it now in Europe, we see it elsewhere, they're going to have to put boots on the ground. And I see that part of his speech as perhaps preparing the American public for that if it becomes necessary.
Boots on the ground in Syria and Iraq?
Could be, yeah. You may not be large numbers, but effective combat troops, small groups that go after leaders. Canadians are doing that. We had some news report about that they're on the ground. And I think that everybody agrees that if you're going to be effective in preventing ISIS from expanding its territory and start pushing back, you've got to have some boots on the ground. It's not going to be done from the air entirely.
Well, looking at Iran, he said he was going to, he vowed that he would veto more sanctions against Iran. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's probably not a good thing. It's very hard to imagine there's going to be an acceptable agreement. It almost sounds like, it does sound like, the President of the United States is desperate for an agreement with Iran, will take any terms at all, and is signaling to the Iranian leaders who are responsible for so much terrorism around the world, trying to build illegal nuclear weapons, saying that I'm going to protect you from the people who are more intense about you keeping your word on these agreements that have already been reached and reaching a broader set of agreements. And that's not likely to end well. It's very bad negotiating strategy internationally. Obama's still negotiating in terms of more like a neighborhood negotiator rather than international, with all the chaos and anarchy that exists and the consequences thereof.
Let's talk about Obama's image. Are we getting signs that his leadership is waning, that it's disintegrating now? I
think we've had those for at least a year. We're in now the beginning of the 6th year of Obama's 8-year presidency. And there's very few, certainly in foreign policy accomplishments, but even domestically. But the economy is doing well in the U.S., and that's to his credit, and that's his main source of strength. But particularly in foreign policy, everything that he's touched has not been successful. Relations with Ukraine and Russia have not been, he's not shown any success in that. And clearly in the Middle East, everything that he's touched has gone bad. Now we have also what amounts to an Iranian type of takeover of Yemen, which is where the terrorists were trained that killed both the cartoonists in Paris and also in the Jewish supermarket. So these are issues that a world leader should be tackling in a much more serious way, and Obama is being criticized very strongly both in the United States and outside for not showing the leadership, and in fact I don't think the State of the Union address really changed that significantly.
Security authorities in Yemen have closed all air, sea, and land crossings into the port city of Aden today as clashes between the Shiite Houthi militia and government forces intensify. President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi is trapped inside of his private residence, which is now surrounded by the powerful rebels. At least 9 people were killed and 90 others wounded in artillery battles with government forces in Sana'a, where residents say they witnessed the worst violence in years. The president's residence was shelled by gunmen stationed in nearby homes, but officials say that the president was unharmed. The turmoil stems from long-standing internal rivalries and instability in the Arabian Peninsula nation. The Houthis are a proxy of Iran and refer to themselves as the Ansar Allah, partisans of God. After a special meeting on the situation, the United Nations Security Council voiced support for the president and is calling on all parties to respect previous agreements and to implement a full and lasting ceasefire.
The members of the Security Council urge all the parties in Yemen to resolve their differences through dialogue and consultation, and to reject acts of violence to achieve political goals, to refrain from provocation, and to fully abide by Resolution 2014, 2051, and 2140.
Here at home, the Knesset is holding a special plenum today that was called in order to approve legislation on the new minimum wage bill. With the elections just around the corner, there was plenty of politicking, with all parties trying to claim responsibility for the initiative to raise the minimum wage to 5,000 shekels a month. The measure passed its first reading with a nearly unanimous vote. The bill has been fast-tracked for approval and will next go to the Knesset Labor and Social Affairs Committee, then quickly return to the plenum for the second and third readings required before becoming law. In political developments, the chairman of the Central Elections Committee, Judge Salim Joubran, has ordered the removal of a Likud campaign video in which Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu portrays his political opponents as unruly kindergarten children. Joubran approved the petition submitted by the Movement for Quality Government and the Yesh Atid party to remove the video depicting Netanyahu as a teacher trying to control the rowdy kids, calling them by the names and nicknames of the other major party heads, Yair Lapid, Bougie or Isaac Herzog, Tzipi Livni, Naftali Bennett, and Avigdor Lieberman. The judge ordered Likud to pay the petitioner's legal expenses and that the video not be broadcast again. Earlier this week, we told you about the trouble that Miss Lebanon is in at home for appearing in an online photo with Miss Israel in the run-up to the Miss Universe contest in Miami. Here's a take on the situation from late-night satirist Jon Stewart.
2 weeks ago, obviously, terrible events in Paris, France, because of an upset about this picture of Prophet Muhammad. But then, world leaders united in an inspiring march for freedom of expression. But as it turned out, some also found pictures of that event unacceptable. The ultra-Orthodox newspaper, as God commanded, used Photoshop to rid the event of women. Which brings us to our new recurring segment, What Picture is Upsetting the Middle East This Week? ISIS beheading, Ayatollah on toilet, hardcore ankle porn, what?
A selfie that's been stirring up attention around the world.
The selfie that's causing a stir at the Miss Universe pageant.
When Miss Israel posted this photo on Instagram with Miss Lebanon also in the same picture, it turned political.
Causing an international incident.
They're not making out. I mean, I'd understand the incident if they're making out. Is there one where they're... Never mind. What is the problem with the selfie? It's not even co-ed.
In Beirut, Lebanese television station Al Jahid says Miss Lebanon should have known better, that to appear in a photo with Miss Israel because Lebanon and Israel are enemies.
It's a beauty pageant. They're all enemies.
Miss Lebanon wrote, quote, "I was having a photo with Miss Japan, Miss Slovenia. Suddenly, Miss Israel jumped in, took a selfie, and uploaded it on her social media."
Sally Drige claims she was photobombed by Miss Israel.
Oh, for the love of... Does everything that happens between Middle East countries have to be a bombing? Does it have to be? Photo, unphoto, even just standing near someone and smiling. And why not just let Miss Israel be? In the overall area of that photo, she's only taking up a very narrow strip at the edge. I mean, what do you want to do? Push her back to, let's say, pre-1967 photo borders? I mean, I get that Israel and Lebanon share an intractable enmity. But come on. The Miss Universe pageant, it's the one chance in the whole year when all nations can put aside their differences, come together in Miami, and as one, treat women like expensive food instead of human beings.
Now taking a look at local finance, and the shekel today put in a mixed performance, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were down across the board. Here's a look at the afternoon numbers. The IBA weather team tells us that our beautiful sunny conditions will continue over the next several days, accompanied by unseasonably warm temperatures. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. I'll be back tomorrow to bring you the latest breaking news. Hope to see you then. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.